Welcome back to Joshua chapter 4. Joshua had called the Israelites and given them the word of the Lord about taking stones from the middle of the Jordan River and taking them onto dry land. Verse 4, Joshua chapter 4, verse 4. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. He told them, "Go into the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out on your shoulder, 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. We will use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, 'What do these stones mean?' Then you can tell them. They remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the ark of the Lord's covenant went across. These stones will stand as a memorial among the people of Israel forever." Often in the Old Testament, God used physical things to remind the Israelites of his faithfulness to them. They were tangible, concrete, not in the sense of ready-mixed concrete, of course, but concrete in the sense of solid reminders of all that he had done. Years ago, people used to take their handkerchief, I don't know if you remember handkerchiefs, made of material, not tissue, and they would tie a knot in them as a reminder. Now, whether you remembered what exactly you tied the knot for was another question, but there was this need to remember. There was a need to have a prompt to remember. And sometimes, this is a fairly new Bible for me, but in my old Bibles, as I flick through some of the passages, I see little notes I put in the margin, or I see little bookmark that has been in there, maybe from a conference. I remember one of my old Bibles, I had a picture that one of our children drew in a service once when they were probably a little bit bored as kids sitting through a long meeting. And they were reminders to me of the goodness of God, reminders to me of hearing from God at a meeting or a conference, reminders to me of the need to be a dad, reminders that the children belong in God's house and their well-being is close to the heart of the Father. And they're reminders. So I want to encourage you to think, what is a reminder to you of some of the goodness of God in your life? Life can be full of trouble. Jesus said, didn't he, in this world you will have trouble. But be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And there will be difficulties, there will be challenges. Some of you are going through huge challenges right now. And we can wish them away, we can paint them in all sorts of colourful language. But the reality is a trouble is still a trouble. And in those times it is essential that we have something to fall back on. We remind ourselves of the goodness of God. And we see that time and time again in Scripture. And we see it frequently that the Jewish people were encouraged to have something physical they could go back to and say, this is a reminder of the goodness of God. He did it then, he can do it again. And maybe you have that need in your life right now to be able to look back and say, God, you were faithful when I was without, back in that situation. You are faithful today, and I believe you're going to be faithful tomorrow. And it's as we look to the Lord like that, that we realize that his faithfulness is sufficient. So I want to encourage you, take things that are tangible and have them within sight or within reach so you can look at those things, even pick them up and say, this just reminds me of the faithfulness of God. Some years ago, we started taking notes of prophetic words or words of encouragement or scriptures or things that people had said to us and putting them on our phone. So we would go through them from time to time. We'd write it out in the notes section on our phone, and we would just go through and flick through and maybe listen to some audio recordings of things that God has said to us as reminders of the goodness of God. We need to be reminded. We are all prone to forget. As we get older, forgetting seems easier and easier. We get better and better at it. And therefore we are in greater need of reminders now than ever. So be encouraged. God is all about reminding you of his faithfulness so that what God has done in the past, he will take you through now, and he will look after you in days to come for the honour of God's name. Be encouraged.